My name is Roxana Chaudhry, and I'm the chair of mental health education for the American Muslim Health Professionals. I'd like to start by telling you a little story about why identity is important to me. I was raised in a northern New Jersey suburb by Pakistani Muslim parents who came here in the early 80s, similar to many people, I think, that probably in this room, but who often didn't know how they fit in, and hence, at times, neither did I. So I had to investigate my multiple identities in order to understand that we all have complexities where we may not fit into a box. And as I began to understand that, I learned that many other people feel the same way. I also come to you today as a clinical psychologist and a psychology professor. And through this work, I have found that by telling your story and sharing your experience, even to those who may not want to hear it at first, you can really begin to change things. And sometimes you can change communities, people, and even conflict. So that's the point of today. Today is about shedding light on different stories, our depths and complexities. And when faced with stereotypes and prejudice, maybe discussions like this can change those in the greater community. That's also why I've been working for AMP for a number of years on mental health advocacy and reduction of mental health, the stigma of mental health issues. And this work, I think, begins with discussions like today, where we can begin to tell the stories of Muslim youth, how they've overcome struggle, maybe how they've overcome stereotypes and prejudice in their own lives, and how they've turned that into something positive in their life. So the voices that you'll hear today are unique, and by the definition of their work, they are bringing in more people into the fold. I want to announce that this is a live webcast, so there are a lot of people watching this nationally. Please send us your questions at #MuslimYouthIdentity and on our Facebook page at facebook.com/AMHPUS. Finally, Busboys and Poets here in Washington, D.C. are our gracious hosts, so please feel free to order food and beverage from them. I'm going to start with my introductions of these three speakers. First, we will hear from Aman Ali. He's an award-winning storyteller in New York City. He was recently named by YouTube and Google as a content creator to watch for his channel, Homegrown Homies, a storytelling channel telling human stories about the Muslim community. Next, we will hear from Bilquis Abdul Qadir. In 2011, Bilquis was awarded the United States Basketball Writers Association Most Courageous Award at the NCAA Women's Final Four for being recognized as the first Muslim woman to play covered in NCAA history. Bilquis is now inspiring young Muslim women to stay true to themselves while using physical activity and basketball as a platform through her nonprofit, Muslim Girls Hoop 2. Finally, we will hear from Ziad Ahmed, who's joining us remotely from Tampa, Florida. He is a 16-year-old junior from New Jersey who has founded an organization called Redefy. Redefy is committed to defying stereotypes, redefining perspectives positively, and embracing acceptance and tolerance, while also creating an active community. So first up, please welcome Aman Ali.
All right, check. Can you guys hear me? We good? Is it too noisy? Can we close the door? Is that dim the lights? Get in the mood. Let's do this. All right. Christmas decorations makes perfect sense. Very excited. We've got the Hunger Games sign up there. I don't know why that's happening, but anyway, can we close it? I wasn't serious about dimming the lights, but if you want to. I mean, if you got some, very white, let's do it. All right, anyway, as you said, my name is Aman Ali. I'm a storyteller. I live in New York City, but I originally grew up in Ohio. And I grew up in a very small, traditional, Indian, conservative Muslim household, where we define marriage as strictly between a man and a cousin, right? And where I went to school, I was literally the only non-white person in the entire school. So during school plays, I either had to be Squanto the Indian or Martin Luther King. It's my only choices growing up. And I'm a diehard basketball fan, And show of hands, anybody remember Hakeem Olajuwon? Hakeem, right? That was my dude, right? You guys remember Hakeem? Muslim or not, one of the greatest players to ever play the game. He's an incredible guy. And I remember when I was 9 years old, Ramadan came around. So my mom's like, Aman, you're 9 years old. It's Ramadan. You need to start fasting. And I'm like, hold up. You mean to tell me that I got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go the whole day, no fruit roll-ups, no juice boxes, for 12 to 15 hours? I'm out. Nah, I ain't trying to do that. And that night, I started watching the NBA playoffs, and they did a story about how on Hakeem Olajuwon. And that night, while fasting, he put up 57 points, grabbed 17 rebounds, and 6 assists. I'm like, yo, Mom, wake me up tomorrow. I'm fasting. I was like super excited, right? And so that happens, and Hakeem was the reason I started fasting. And so then I get older, I become an adult, and you started becoming a performer, traveling, going all over. And I was very fortunate to meet all these incredible individuals, but I never got a chance to meet Hakeem Olajuwon. Anybody from Houston? Any Houston people here? All right, good. Let's talk about them. Y'all can maybe you can back me up. Have you met Hakeem? I hate you. How did you meet Hakeem? How'd you meet Hakeem? He goes to your masjid. But here's the thing. Maybe you can back me up on this. Like, every person I've ever known that has met Hakeem, it's never like a normal story. It's always a crazy, like, amazing experience, right? It's amazing. I'll give you an example. So I would always, like, try to meet Hakeem. And everybody I know has crazy Hakeem stories. One of my good friends from Houston, he was driving down the street on the highway. He gets a flat tire. And he's, like, frustrated. He calls AAA, and, like, nobody's answering. And so he's trying to change it himself. And an SUV pulls up. And he's like, hey, what seems to be the trouble? It was Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem gets out of his car, helps this guy change his tire. And on his phone, he has a picture of him and Hakeem, like, changing their tire. And so I would travel to Houston and do shows. And if I had a show on Saturday, I would show up on Thursday. Maybe I might run into him. Which mosque you go to? All right, I'm going to that mosque now. But I would never see him every single time. Like, it would be like, oh, dude, why'd you pray Friday prayer at that mosque? Hakeem went to the other one. Oh, bro, your show is on Saturday? Hakeem's doing an event here on Sunday. Every single time this would happen. Until recently, my mother and I, we made Hajj together recently. I took my mom on Hajj. Mashallah, I'm a very good person. And so I went to Hajj. And if you don't know Hajj is one of the most beautiful gatherings of human beings on the planet. 6 to 8 million people from all over the world, from all these different colors of the rainbow, come from one place to celebrate spirituality, to make sacrifice. And so my mom and I were there on Hajj, and we're at Mina, the part where you have to throw the rocks at the pillar, right? So I'm throwing my rocks, I'm done, and I'm waiting for my mom to finish up. And in the corner of my eye, it's Hakeem Olajuwon! I'm like, Allah has answered my prayers! This is amazing! This is so awesome! And I'm like, oh my God, I met Hakeem is here. Like, I gotta say something to him. But I'm like, oh man, he's probably so used to, like, people coming up to him and fanboys. Like, he's just here on Hajj. He's probably trying to get away from all that. He doesn't want to be bothered. But I'm like, yo, when else am I gonna get a chance to meet Hakeem? I gotta say something. And so I was like, I'm just gonna say salams to him, and I won't bother him. I just want to say hi. And so it looked like he was waiting for someone. He's just sitting there, and he's just, like, going through his phone. And I walk up to him, and I was like, hi, I just want to tell you that I grew up in Ohio, and people used to make fun of me for being Muslim, and I used to be so ashamed to be a Muslim, but then I would see you on television just owning everybody, just being so proud to be Muslim and who you were, and that gave me confidence and pride in being who I was. And I don't know if I would do any of the things in my life if it wasn't for you. And I know this sounds so crazy coming from a total stranger, but I just want to tell you that I love you, and thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. And that's when I realized it wasn't Hakeem Olajuwon. It was just a tall Nigerian guy. Anyways, I bring that story up for a reason, because I grew up, right? And there really wasn't a lot of people like us on television. And even today, you see a lot of like talk about Islam and talk about Muslims, but it doesn't feel like, yo, that's not me up there. That's not my homegirl up there. That's not my friend up there. I'll give you a clear-cut example. Is the computer loaded up? Can you go to Google image search? Y'all can do this too. Pull out Google image search on your phone. Google image search, clear the porn. Come on. Some of you are laughing. Some of you guys are clearing your cookies. You're like, better, pun intended. Can you load up Google image search? Sorry, I didn't prepare them for this. We got it? We got it? Okay, so Google Images, type in Islam. Anybody got it? Nothing crazy, pretty straightforward. There might be a couple wacky images, but like, you're pretty straightforward stuff. All right, can you go to Google Images? Yeah, images. Top right, awesome. All right, just type in Islam. All right, so you got some Arabic, you've got the Kaaba, nothing out of the ordinary. If you scroll down, there might be a couple wacky photos or whatever. For the most part, pretty normal, right? Now, I want you all to do this. Go to the top and type in Muslim women. Bam! Ninjas. Okay, anybody friends with this girl? Anybody friends with this girl? Anybody know this dude with the sword? Right? That's crazy. This is Google, dude. This isn't Fox News. This is Google. Right? And so these are the things that I've noticed, that people, most intelligent people, have a basic understanding that Islam is not a violent religion or this or that. Most people understand that. But they don't know anything about Muslims. Like, who are we? They're like, okay, I get Islam doesn't believe in violence, but I don't know anything about Muslims. Like, you see all these polls where it says, like, America has, 60% of people have an unfavorable view of Islam, right? But if you look at the polls, within that 60%, it says that maybe 8% of them have ever met a Muslim in their life. But the thing is, they probably have. What does a Muslim look like, right? Me? No. Looks like anybody. It can look like anybody, right? And so these are the challenges that we were starting to notice. And so I started off as an entertainer, but I did a couple projects in the community, project 30 Mosques in 30 Days, where a friend of mine, we did a documentary all over the country, kind of telling stories about the American Muslim community, and it's kind of snowballed from there. Until recently, we did a project with Google called Homegrown Homies, and how that came about, Google reached out to a bunch of Muslim entertainers, filmmakers, scholars, activists, whoever, and we're like, yo, this ISIS thing is crazy. We want you guys to respond to what they're doing. I'm like, nah, I don't do that. They're like, why not? It's like, I'm not an activist, right? There's some people that do a great job at that. I'm an entertainer. You know, I'm a storyteller. Like, that's what I do. I talk about my friend's life, other people I know life. Like, I'm trying to do that. I'm not here to respond to anybody, because if you're there to respond, to condemn, to change people's opinions, this and that, no matter how good it is, it's always going to be seen as a response to something. It's always going to be seen as a whack public service. And I was like, oh, I'm a Muslim, and I'm an American, and I don't believe in this, blah, 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 blah. We've been condemning stuff for 20 years. Where's it gotten us? Nowhere. It's important to condemn attacks and this and that, right? But that's all we've done, right? And nothing has really changed. And what we started realizing is we would start to do interviews and this and that, and a lot of people, a lot of producers and editors, they just assume that the narrative of Islam around the world is this black and white battle between good and evil, right? It's the moderates versus the extremists, and they are coming at each other like the intro to the X-Men cartoon from the 90s. I just alienated like 95% of this room. Thank you, nerds, for laughing in the back. That's what the portrayal is, right? But those aren't the conversations that I'm having at the coffee shops, at the chai places, at Ravi Kebab, at the hookah lounges. Like, that's not what we're talking about. What are we talking about? We're like, yo, why isn't this girl texting me? Or where am I, okay, maybe just me. How am I going to pay for my loans? Where can I get a job? Our struggles aren't unique to anybody. And so we started to tell stories about people that just happen to be Muslim. And we started the storytelling series to do that. So I have a very quick clip, and I'm going to set it up in Newark, New Jersey. There are 3 to 5 Muslims that are dying every single week. This isn't Kashmir. This isn't Syria. This isn't Lebanon, Palestine, wherever. This is Newark, New Jersey, 20 or 30 minutes from New York City, probably only like 2.5 hours from where we live. And Muslims are getting shot left and right in the streets, and nobody's talking about this issue. So there was a group of morticians that were so fed up with performing funerals for these young kids, they decided to confront these gangbangers. And they actually work with the Bloods and the Crips, and they confront these people and say, yo, you think this life is glamorous? You think shooting someone up is glamorous? Wash your body with us. Build a coffin with us. Let me show you what it really looks like. You want to die? This is what it looks like. So it's a very scared straight approach to it. And so this is just a quick trailer about it.
It's our time to shine. We're going to grind till we shine. Listen to me. We're going to grind till we shine. Greatness is upon us. Greatness is upon us. Yeah. Understand? Yeah. Greatness is upon us.
When we not here, where else we gonna go? Like, we all live in the hood, so we all around this. Like, they always say law first, but they still out here in the streets and stuff like that.
I became very active in this process in the mid to late 80s because AIDS was very prevalent. At that time, people were dying 3 to 5 Muslims a week easily. A lot of the deaths today are not because of illnesses. They are gun-related, gang-related, just senseless crimes.
It kills a part of me every day. That I gotta go to the cemetery to talk to my son. I wish this on nobody, nobody, nobody.
He raised his shirt up and had a gun. Like, this is my life. Blood is my life. Islam is my religion. The lost sheep are in the streets. They're not in the church. They're not in the mosque.
It amazes me of us being first-generation Muslims right here in Newark, New Jersey, where we never met a prophet. Our families are not Muslim and Muslim and Muslim, and we don't want it to seem like it's just doom and it's hopeless.
I don't know why they turn into the streets. Like, this could be our group, like Muslims, and we just brothers together.
So that's a piece. It's a documentary film that's debuting at Tribeca Film Festival next year, and we'll be taking it on the road to other film festivals, stuff like that. And really what we're doing is we want to travel around, my brother I should say. We're traveling around the country telling stories that feel real. Now, this is just one narrative. This is not the narrative of African-American Muslims in this country. This is just one story about one community that's being impacted by this. And that's really what we were trying to do, is tell stories that actually feel real. We're not trying to change people's opinions about Islam. We just want to tell stories that feel real. And that's how you change people's perceptions indirectly, is things that feel real. For example, who listened to Serial? Free Adnan hashtag? Anybody yet? Adnan Syed has done more for Muslims than what CARE has done in 20 years in terms of improving the lives, improving people's perceptions of Muslims, right? Because it actually felt real. Obviously, the murder is not doesn't feel like us, but the whole, like, having a girl, like, and wondering how your parents are going to find out, that's a real narrative, and it felt very real. And that's what we were trying to do with our stories, is create something human and really just focus on that. And so a lot of people ask us, well, how do I change people's perceptions about Islam? Just be you, right? Hang out with your coworkers after work. You don't have to go to a drink. Just hang out, chill. If you're a soccer mom, if you have kids in PTA, like, go make cupcakes for the parents, like, whatever. Like, just be involved. And that's how you change things. Like, I'm an entertainer. I'm a filmmaker. This is what I do. But we all have a responsibility to this. This is just a multi-layered approach. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I don't want to keep going on and on, but really just the way to change a narrative is just being ourselves. Because we're dope. We're killing it. And we need to celebrate that. We need to take pride in that. Like, we're all doing incredible things. I've had the opportunity to meet some of you guys here, and it's an honor just to be with some of you guys here, and we need to celebrate that. And we need to support initiatives that, you know, Bilquis is doing, and Ziad's doing, and what I'm doing, and what my homegirl Layla's doing, and what Amhp is doing. Like, we're all doing incredible things, right? And we need to really just support that. And that's how you make a difference, is you find people that are actually like doing dope things and get inspired by them and do dope things ourselves.
Oh wow, that was dope. I liked it. So I kind of wrote something up, but I don't do well off of that. I like his improv. But I just want to start off with that Google image he brought up with Muslim women. For me, that was like my everyday story, to have to try to break that stereotype right there. That was it for me. Like, oh, don't you have to wear all black every day? Why do? And I'm like, dude, stop Googling it. Stop Googling Muslims. Don't do it. And that's very true. So for me, before I start, I just want to show a quick video to kind of give you all a brief history of myself, so that you kind of have an understanding of kind of who I am, what I went through, and all of that type of stuff. So you can go ahead and play it.
It was a historic night in Springfield, and for the state as well. By the end of this season, this young lady won't have just broken the record, she will have shattered it.
It was a packed house tonight at Commerce High School as parents, students, and teachers wanted to watch for themselves as senior Bilquis Abdul Qadir blew Rebecca Lobo's scoring record out of the water.
It's really cool to be able to set a new record in Massachusetts, and hopefully it can be up there for a couple of years, but hopefully when I get maybe to Rebecca Lobo's, where she's at in life, I can see a younger person break it.
Another young woman who has thrived in her school is Bilquis Abdul Qadir. She's not even 5'5". Where's Bilquis? Right here. Stand up, Bilquis, just so that I want everybody to know. She's got heels on. She's 5'5". Bilquis broke Rebecca Lobo's record for the most points scored by any high school basketball player in Massachusetts history. She recently told a reporter, "I'd like to really inspire a lot of young Muslim girls if they want to play basketball. Anything is possible. They can do it too." As an honor student, as an athlete on her way to Memphis, Bilquis is an inspiration not simply to Muslim girls, she's an inspiration to all of us.
For the first time in her playing career, Bilquis Abdul Qadir has hit a roadblock.
All these years that I've played, and I finally get to a point where I can get there and I get stopped. I can say I've never really had any type of adversity like as big as this one.
Due to her religious beliefs, the 2014 Missouri Valley Conference Newcomer of the Year is required to change her attire as she gets older.
As Muslim women, once you reach the age of womanhood, we have to cover our bodies, hair, all the way down. And we do it for modesty, for protection.
Basketball's governing body, FIBA, has a rule that bans players from wearing equipment that may cause injury to others, including headwear, hair accessories, and jewelry.
My head covering goes against their religious views, that they want to keep the court or the games religiously neutral.
Recently, FIBA's policymaking board has agreed to review the rule on August 27th. The decision to review comes in light of the United States Olympic Committee and India's government calling for an end to the ban.
I just want to be able to play in a pro game, because I know I feel like I have the ability to do so. And that's been my dream since I was younger.
Thank you. It's funny, no matter how many times I watch that video, like tears well up in my eyes. It just kind of sucks. But I started playing basketball when I was like 4 years old. I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts, which is also the birthplace of basketball. So not a coincidence, maybe not. My whole family pretty much played, so it was kind of in my bloodstream to pick up a ball and go at it. When I first started wearing hijab, I was a freshman in high school, and it was a scary time. And I think it's a scary time for any Muslim, young Muslim girl who decides to wear hijab. It took me almost like 2 weeks to go back to school, I was like, what are people gonna say about me? Or how many questions am I gonna get? You know, and it was more so me scaring myself. And I felt like I couldn't be who I was. I felt like just this piece of material was gonna change my whole image, and it was scary. At that time, I was young, you know, as a teenager, you wanna fit in. The last thing you wanna do, you don't wanna be different. You wanna be the same as your peers. You wanna be able to go with the in crowd. You don't wanna stand out. So I can remember, like, I didn't really know what hijab meant. I didn't know why. I was too young and immature mentally to understand what it truly meant. I didn't know why Allah, you know, demanded us to do so. So at the time I was like, you know, I don't want to do this. You know, it was a back and forth thing, but I didn't do it for the sake of Allah. When I first started covering, it was to not disobey my parents or displease my mother and father. So I did it. Somewhere deep down, I found the strength to go ahead and like, look, I'm going to do this. And eventually I fit in. But what helped me fit in was basketball. Basketball was more than just a sport to me. It was a part of me. It became a part of my identity. And overall, it helped me stay grounded in Islam. So whenever I stepped out on the court, that was my common ground. That was my comfort zone. I would be this, like, you see what I wore, long tights, long sleeves, hair covered. And I forgot about being different, and so did everybody else. When you're in a game of basketball, when you're playing, the common goal is to win, to play hard, to drop dimes. I was a point guard, so that's all I did was throw good passes, make good plays. So at that time, my opponents, my teammates, we were all the same. We were all equal. So that's where I felt most comfortable. Now, there were times where I did get taunted. I would be taking the ball out of bounds, and I remember this like it was yesterday. Somebody was like, it was a teenager. He was like, you look like Osama bin Laden's niece. And I was like, well, first of all, that's a terrible joke. What are you, Osama bin Laden's niece? Like, seriously, the game stopped. My coach was a big guy, high school. It was high school. Big man came across, wanted to rip this kid out the stands. So it got real. And then in college, it was even worse because I was aware of what was going on. So I would walk in arenas or gyms, and I could feel the heat from people's stares, like looking at me like, who is this girl? Why does she, you know, and I would see people whispering, leaning over, like head nodding to me. And I'm just like, this is, it weighs on you after a while. And my teammates to be able to support me like, look, Keith, that was my nickname, Keith, let's go. You know what, let's win this game, let's get out of here. And so that would kind of keep me, it would kind of make me play a little harder, but at the same time it was hard. And the thing was, as soon as I picked up a ball to play, or I'd hit a few cool shots, do some moves, at the end of a game, people would come up to me and be like, wow, those questions and those whispers and those stares would turn into questions about who I was and why I was all covered. And you know, how did I get to this level of basketball? You're Muslim, you're a Muslim woman. What are you doing here? So that opened doors for me to fulfill one of my duties as a Muslim, and that's to give dawah and to spread the word of Allah. So when that happened, I was feeling it. I was like, man, you know, this isn't so bad. You know, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I'm at the top of my game, senior year. I had an awesome senior year. Alhamdulillah, I played well, and I have an agent. I had film, and I was ready to go play pro overseas. And FIBA comes around with this rule, and I'm like, I'm devastated to think that I can't play after all of these years because of hijab. You know, the same hijab that brought me to the White House, helped me travel all across the country, the same hijab that was going to stop me from pursuing my dreams. So that was it was a contradiction. I'm like, wait a minute. I was doing all of this good, you know, wearing hijab, deciding to do it, and then boom, I get stopped because of hijab. So for me, I started to question everything. Started to question wearing hijab. I started to question Islam. I started to question who I was. Like, I felt so lost. And at that point, I remember all I could do was I prayed. And I know it sounds cliche, but prayer it works. And I remember being in sujood. That's when we pray, we put our head to the floor. I remember being down there so long that I felt the blood rush into my head because I needed guidance. I needed an answer. I needed to know what was next for me. And something changed in my heart. And I realized that I'm like, you know what? I thought about taking hijab off to go play. I did, and may Allah forgive me for having that terrible thought. But that was reality for me. And what I did was I realized that, you know what, on the day of judgment, I'm going to be judged for who I am. Allah's going to question me for what I did on this earth. And I realized that was my test. FIBA was my test. Was I going to conform? Was I going to fold? You know, was I going to just try to be accepted to go shoot some hoops and then pay me, you know, a couple $1,000s a month? It wasn't worth it. And it wasn't worth my identity. And if I lost Islam, then I don't know where I would have been. And I just know that being born a Muslim is hard because it's a blessing because you're born Muslim, but then you don't have it truly in your heart yet. I think at a point in our lives, we all become Muslim once in our lives. You know, even though we're born, we have it, something has to change us. And I wanted to feel that. I wasn't proud of hijab. I wasn't proud of it because I didn't feel it. And so I know that the only thing that got me through was prayer, and it was basketball. And for us, you know, as a young Muslim and just Muslims all over the world right now, we're in, I don't want to say it's a crisis, but it is. You know, like he mentioned, people don't know about Islam. And it's our job to take that back. And before we can change the image about, or the media about how everybody hates Islam and everybody hates Muslims, we have to change ourselves first. We have to be proud of being a Muslim. I know people whose names are Tariq and they go by T because they're afraid or they're not proud. And so what I always say is, you know, our Muslim men, you know, grow your beards. You know, wear kufi to work. Pray in the middle of your office. Be proud. You know, for our Muslim women, put on hijab. Dress modestly. Do it, because if people see that we're proud of being a Muslim, then that right there is going to change just the small amount of people that you interact with on a daily basis. And for me, that's what I had to overcome. And once you realize you're not living for everybody else, you know, we're too busy trying to be accepted. We're not living for anybody. This world is temporary, and I think that's what we have to realize. And so that's kind of what, you know, it's kind of what I did and how I got to where I am. So I'm proud, and alhamdulillah, I think basketball saved me in a way, and that's it.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ziyad Ahmed. I'm really excited to be at this American Muslim Health Professionals event tonight to talk about Muslim youth identity. When I first heard the topic, it was a little funny because, like, I'm a Muslim, I'm youth, and I'm identities. So theoretically, I could just talk about myself. But I'm hoping I could be a little bit more interesting than that tonight. So basically, I wanted to start though by just saying that my thoughts and prayers are with the victims and all those affected by the San Bernardino shootings today in California. And I wanted to start that because it's really part of my American identity to share that I'm born, raised, and proud American, and that these tragedies affect me and heartbreak me just as much as anyone, as my American identity is so important to me. And my activism is rooted in my belief that all lives need to be valued equally. The San Bernardino Mountains are also where I attend Muslim Youth Camp, which is a camp that I've gone to every year for the past decade. The San Bernardino Mountains, where I've come together with many different American Muslim leaders and students and made such valuable friends and memories. It's a place where I've really come to terms and found my Muslim youth identity. So those mountains hold a very special place in my life. Hold a very special place in my heart, as I hope that everyone in this country and those mountains are safe. But I want to talk about Muslim Youth Camp a bit more, because it was in those mountains, surrounded by leaders, thinkers, and peers, that I found how precious my American Muslim identity was, and how important it was to me, and how it affected the ways that I interacted with the world around me, and how it manifested in my own general identity. Because there I learned how much my faith could be intertwined with my activism, and that it's part of my duty as a human to give back to humanity, and that's my responsibility. I learned from people like Jihad Turk and Asifan Amar Qureshi and so many impressive Muslim scholars, and I thought, and I sat there and said, I wanted to be one of them. I want to make a difference for this community. I heard stories of people being ostracized, belittled, and scrutinized, and told they couldn't because of their faith, and I wasn't going to sit there and be complacent about it. It's that my entire identity, my upbringing has affected my activism. When I was little, whether it be when my parents unfairly punished my sister, and I was like, no, Daddy and Mommy, you can't do that. She didn't do anything wrong. Or whether it be now, when Donald Trump and Ben Carson so atrociously say that we should only accept Christian refugees or none at all. It's not right, and I actively try to use my voice to uplift that. Through Muslim Youth Camp and through my parents exposing me to the news and taking me around the world and showing me the beauty and peace and faith in myself, but also growing up in a Catholic school and being immersed in the diversity and beauty of this country, I realized and realize every day how much my American Muslim youth identity has to do with one concept. And that concept is confronting reality. The reality is, when I was little, even in 3rd grade, and I attended Muslim youth camp, I knew coming back to school that there'd be questions. What did I do there? What kind of things do you learn there? What is your faith all about? A part of me questioned where they asked things like, did you learn how to build bombs there? The reality was, I'm just like every other kid, and at the camp I played games, I went swimming, I laughed with friends, I made memories. But there was always that tingling, how would the world respond to my faith? How would the world respond to any of my idiosyncrasies or aspects about my existence? And it comes back to the idea of confronting reality. So as I sit here before you today, because of my work to advance the cause of justice, it has to do with the fact that I've realized, and I realized very early on, that I'm an American Muslim, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be American, I'm proud to be Muslim. And that identity is not contradictory, but I have to confront the reality that so many Americans, so many people in this world do believe it to be contradictory. And it's my duty not only to demonstrate to my peers, the world around me, the peace and goodness within my faith in myself, but also to advocate for equality for all, because I recognize the fact that I cannot selectively advocate for equality, because by definition, it is for all. My activism is rooted in my belief that all injustices are one injustice. And whether it be the hate crime of the killing of North Carolina, or whether it be the San Bernardino shootings today, or whether it be the atrocious number of trans murders of Black women in this year alone, they're all one injustice. They're rooted in hate, they're rooted in ignorance, they're rooted in prejudice, and we can't stand for it. So as I grew up and I went from Catholic school to co-ed secular education, and I saw how many people were being detrimented by being told and being put into these unfair boxes, I said I had to do something about it. It's mind-boggling to me that so many boys feel as if it's a crime to express emotion. It's a crime to rebel and establish status quo. I went about creating Redefine the summer before my freshman year because I knew that going into high school, the stereotypes, the discrimination, the prejudice would only intensify because the media is unforgiving. So I went about creating Redefine the summer before my freshman year in 2013. And our mission statement is to defy stereotypes, redefine perspectives positively, embrace acceptance and tolerance, and create an active community. But also, ultimately, it also boils down to the fact of confronting reality. The story that the mainstream media presents to us that intertwines Islam with terrorism, that makes minorities feel lesser than, that continuously belittles differences, is not the narrative that we can accept. The reality is diversity is beautiful. Islam is beautiful. We are beautiful, and our narratives need to be heard. So, as my Muslim youth identity indicated, it was time for me to speak up for justice. It was time for me to show the world that I am not associated to terrorism, that nobody is we cannot continue to categorize people with unfair, broad brushes, because we are more than labels. We are more than stereotypes. We are human, and we need to embrace in that humanity. We need to tap into empathy. So I began writing and sharing stories and uplifting narratives that need to be heard. Because far too often, stories and narratives of other than are just unheard. In school, I dream of a day where I open a book or read a story about a narrative I empathize with. I've never once read a story in English class about an American Muslim heroine, about a role model that I could empathize with, that I could see myself in. But I think we could all count and enumerate the number of times we've read about that same white male heteronormative hero that we're told to idolize. So, Redefine is a platform to share stories. Anyone can post their stories about their experiences with discrimination or stereotypes or observations. And we have articles on current events to give people alternative points of view. And through my journey, I've come to see that there are people, there are sources that we need to tap into. AJ Plus is exceptional. The Atlantic is exceptional. There are sources that we can look to read about what's really happening, to look beyond the garbage that Fox News keeps on feeding us and trying to make us accept as truth. So I continue to use Redefine as a platform and to use it as a platform to speak up for justice and to advance the cause of equality and to advance the cause of equality. We've grown to a team of nearly 150 students from 10 different countries, to amass over 2,000 on Facebook, and to nearly have 40,000 hits on our website. That is because of how pervasive these issues are. No one is the stereotype, and that's the reality we have to confront. Whether it be about Islam, whether it be about anything, nobody is the stereotype. We all have our unique stories to tell that we wish, that we demand to be heard. And we can use platforms like Redefine to make them heard. So we have events, we have conversation series on current events, because it's ridiculous, it's mind-boggling that we can talk about the xenophobia during Sacco Vanzetti and World War II and etc. But the seemingly ignorant kids around me at my school have no idea about the anti-Muslim bigotry occurring right now. And they won't be able to tell their kids about it. That's wrong. So we're trying to Redefine, we have current event conversation series for teens. We have an advocacy blog where we post reports on current events weekly. We have to try to educate, to promote understanding, to inspire empathy, because it's our duty and humanity. And this event, the Miss American Muslim Health Professional, amazing Muslim youth identity event, was put on by the mental health team. I think that's a really pertinent part about this. I cannot tell you how sad it makes me think about how many of my friends have struggled with depression, anxiety, self-harm, and etc. And that's rooted in the unfair societal stereotypes that we are bombarded with continuously. The world cannot keep telling me I'm a terrorist as much as the world needs to stop telling women they need to conform to some unfair stereotype and that they need to be subjugated. None of us deserve to be subjugated or stereotyped or labeled in these unfair ways, and it's affecting our mental health. It's affecting our health, it's affecting our community. It's affecting our ability to perform, to excel. We're squashing voices, we're squashing dreams, we're squashing passion. Too many Muslims are tiptoeing Islam like some disease to run away from because of the pervasive, widespread prejudice that makes it hard to declare, I am a Muslim and I am proud. Let me say it louder, I am a Muslim and I am proud. So many kids don't feel that way because of the looks they get when they say that. Because of the way the woman hijab was treated when they saw plane. Because they know they dare not grow their beard too long because of the stereotypes that come with it. Wrong. But we can't, I don't want to just hear and be some preacher and saying this is wrong, and bring the mood down. We can be engaged, and I am so fortunate that I can be part of the solution. My work has been commended by PBS, TV, and it even brought me to White House Iftar to talk to and meet President Barack Obama personally and him speaking in his speech. And my existence was so validated by having his support in my efforts to bring justice, to bring equality to this country, and to recognize that I'm as much American and as much a human as anyone else, irrespective of what Fox News might say about me. And I wish that everyone experienced the same moment of validation, because subsequently, they would be that much more inspired to speak out for what is right, because we're told too often to bite our tongue, that our narrative isn't good enough, that it's not time, it will be too profound. But we have to engage. We have not to say, okay, Trump and Carson can't say these things. We have to actively be supporting candidates who are opposing that. I'm working on an Amhp campaign right now, and I am proud that he's standing up for the Syrian refugees. He's standing up for Muslims. He's saying in the wake of the Paris attacks that these atrocities break our hearts, but we cannot blame our Muslims brothers and sisters, because we are all brothers and sisters in humanity. So we have to seek solutions and work together and embrace in causes like Redefine and mental health professionals. And beyond that, we need to destigmatize mental illness and discrimination and everything that's happening within the Muslim community, because far too many people are being pushed away from Islam within because their Muslim youth identity isn't valid enough. I don't know how many times I've been belittled because people view me as too unreligious, too secular, too whatnot. I believe in God, and I believe Prophet Muhammad was his messenger. That's my Islam. And we need to accept and destigmatize within Islam, but not in our American public. We need to destigmatize Islam, because it is not something to be scared of. A phobia is something to be scared of. Islam is a religion of peace. So we need to stay engaged. We need to seek solutions, and we need to confront the reality that our American Muslim youth identity, or whatever identity, is beautiful. I am American, I am Muslim, and my identity is not and has never been contrary. All we want is a world safe for our children and accepting of everyone and accepting our children. But the only way we can guarantee that is by working towards creating a world that is safe and accepting for all of our children, and destigmatizing things, and by promoting uplifting narratives that need to be heard, and by accepting people, and by embracing inequality and justice intersectionally, in interfaith ways and innovative ways. My Muslim youth identity is about confronting the reality that exists. That when I post a statement in opposition to the Global Rally for Humanity, and I get 50 comments saying the Over Islam is bombing all of you, and I respond to them, and people saying you shouldn't respond to them, they're just haters. But I respond for every Muslim kid that scrolls through those comments so that they know there's someone fighting for them. There's someone eloquently speaking on their behalf, uplifting their narrative because it demands to be heard. I comment back because it's not a global rally for humanity when you're just saying anti-Muslim bigoted things on a national mainstream platform. We have to use our voices. We have to, for every person scrolling who isn't a Trump supporter or Carson supporter, who might just be like, what is this? They just clicked on a hashtag. They need to see the truth, the reality. My Muslim youth identity is about confronting reality. Confronting the reality exists. And the fact that so many people are being detrimented by unfair stereotypes. And inshallah, I look forward to working with many of you to create a better tomorrow for everyone, because that is what my Muslim youth identity demands. Thank you, and I'm very appreciative of your time.
Okay, I'm gonna have Aman and Bilquis join me up here for the second part of our event tonight, where we're gonna be able to do a moderated discussion between all the panelists. So I'd like to begin just by thanking Ziad, Aman, and Bilquis tonight for sharing your stories, for talking about the diversity that exists in the American Muslim community. And I have a question for each of you, and then we'll open up some questions to the audience. I want to ask Aman first. Why is it important that American Muslims tell their stories?
Because there really isn't anybody else telling their stories. I think there's a perception that Islam is this monolithic community and religion, and they all go through the same things. But even in my projects, and I'm a Harry Brown kid from Ohio, right? And so my perspective is unique to me, and it might resonate with a few people, but it's not representative of anybody. And the reason why is there's nobody else telling these stories. And there's a reason why people can get away with saying ignorant things, because there's nobody else out there. It's not that we have to challenge them and combat them. I'll give you an analogy. I compare ignorance, whether it's Trump, extremists, right-wing extremists, or even ISIS or these other idiots on the other side. I compare it to McDonald's, right? McDonald's was killing it for years. Big Macs, just garbage, and Filet-O-Fish and fries and garbage. Shake Shack comes out, Five Guys comes out, says bow down, all organic. This is what's up. They didn't condemn McDonald's. They didn't speak out against Happy Meals. They just said, yo, we're gonna do it dope, we're gonna do what's real, actual, all natural, all organic, because there's nobody else doing it. So there's lots of McDonald's out there, and we just gotta come at them with some Shake Shack. That's really all you have to do. I didn't have dinner, so.
Thank you. So my next question is for Bilquis. So you talked about in your talk about the moment that you walked on to the court for some of the first times, at least, where you wore hijab, and you could feel the glare of people's eyes, essentially, and their stares. And my question to you is, did that somehow motivate you?
Definitely did. I'm a player of energy. I like to build off of just excitement and little swag and everything like that. So at first it bothered me, of course, but that was my like trigger to go ahead and, you know what, let me try to drop 20 points tonight. Let me try to play at my best to show that I'm normal. I'm a regular basketball player. Besides the fact that I'm all covered, it doesn't matter. I'm still, I still have the skill as the next person on the court. So it was definitely a motivator, and just made me play a lot harder sometimes.
Great. I want to ask one question of Ziad. So Ziad, your talk spoke a lot about, how stereotypes impact us, and not just American Muslims, but all groups. And I wanted to hear more from you, especially when you work with young people, which I know you do, as young as 5th graders. What do you see in those young people? How do stereotypes affect them? What have you seen from your work?
I think that, one, we don't give teenagers enough credit. I'm 16 years old. I think people are often surprised about how vocal I am or how much I've accomplished. But I think that has a lot to do less with how competent teenagers are and more with how much the stereotype of how much efficacy a teenager can have detrimented us. So I think that teenagers really are really engaged. Log onto any social media platform, kids speaking out for what is right. Like hashtag refugees welcome. Those are teenagers posting. There is so much positivity coming out of teenagers speaking up against these detrimental stereotypes, and I've experienced so much positivity and so much acceptance and welcoming of my message and Rita Fi's message, and that's why we've grown so quickly and why we have so many team members, because of how much the idea of how much stereotypes detriment people resonates with teenagers, because they feel it and they understand how it's detrimented them and they want to do something about it. But more than that, we have voices and we understand what's really happening and we're willing to confront the reality, but we need to be given platforms to be considered legitimate in that. Because if we're just saying a lot of things on social media, but our parents are just writing that off of, oh, they're just on their phones too much, we don't have, that voice is just constantly belittled. So I think that yes, there are teenagers that are overly fixated with parties and phones and whatever. But I think that if we continue to really include teenagers in this conversation, as Rita Fi is trying to do, you'll be really surprised and warmed by how much teenagers have to offer, how they understand our current state of reality, and how motivated we are to make a difference about it. And I think that one-on-one conversations are the most meaningful. And when I really could talk to my peers who really didn't understand my work, we just explained, why do Black Lives Matter? Why is it wrong to say X derogatory term? And really talk to them. I think that, like, when you're little kids, like, we're not born discriminatory. We're not born racist. We're not born sexist. right? These are things that we're learned, that we're conditioned to be. And I think that as we're young, you see that purity in all of us. I've been really moved by it, and I'm excited to continue doing that work.
So essentially what you're saying is if young people are given the opportunity to talk about stereotypes, to try to define it, to try to understand it, you often find that they actually are capable of being active in some way against them or just redefining people's identities. Excellent.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that people suffer from depression and anxiety because they feel unheard. They feel like their parents aren't accepting them, like society doesn't consider their identity, their voice legitimate. And if we continue to stigmatize, we continue to include people in the conversations and make people feel human, we'll see a great generation of activists, pluralists emerge, and more, we'll see a generation of healthy individuals contributing to a better tomorrow.
Thanks, Ziad. I want to open up this discussion to the audience here in Washington, D.C. that is with us here at Busboys and Poets, and we'd love to hear from you. Sure. We have a microphone.
I needed an answer. I needed to know.
And you can just announce your name and your question.
My name is Nadia, and I just want to say thank you to all of the panelists for the great work that you're doing. I want to especially thank Sister Bilkis for your strength, your courage, and for being that role model for our tweens, our preteens. And so my question to you is, what advice would you give our budding teens here who go to public school and don't have a lot of great role models other than mom, but you know, around them? Inshallah, what would you say to them?
Honestly, I don't think there's any advice that could really just change a young person or a young Muslim. You know, like I said, it has to start, I think it has to start within. And the most a parent could do, like for your daughter, is, you know, make sure that foundation at home is strong. You know, it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You know, the best thing you can do is provide Islam to them. Tell her or your daughter or son, whatever it is, whoever it is, you know, give them the importance of Islam, why we have it, and really let them know the wrongs and the rights and what's more important in this life, you know. And I would say just for her, you know, for somebody her age, you know, be proud. You know, don't let these other people, these other kids, because kids are mean, you know. Kids are very mean nowadays. I have nieces and nephews, and they come home in stories and saying, oh, my friend said my boots are ugly. And I'm like, you're in 2nd grade. What do you mean they're ugly? You know, why do they know that? And so I think what the best thing to do is just make sure they have a strong foundation. And that's just morally, spiritually, and whatever else that may come with growing up as a young person, a young Muslim in this world. Just be strong and don't let the outside factors ruin that, because I think that's where we get caught up, like a teenager. You know, that's where we get caught up. And fitting in is one of the most, it's hard. And just make sure they have that identity early on, because if they don't have it, you'll get lost.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Zishan Chuktai. Thank you guys so much for hosting this. For the panel, for all three of you, just one thing. I'm a writer becoming a doctor. And as your stories were shared today, I'm so appreciative of that. I brought my younger cousin here today. He's 15 years old. And as busy as I am, I wanted to also be in attendance to this event because I know it's so important with all the things that are happening in this world, in the United States and beyond. What's one thing you can have him and tell him so that he remembers after leaving this event? Just one thing. There's so much things that were said were so amazing and so important, but in leaving today, what's one thing can you share with him and for anybody else that can benefit? Thank you.
To answer your question, I think just do what you want to do. Don't worry about making a profession out of it or a living. Don't stress out about any of that stuff. Just have fun. Even if you don't pursue a career in writing or whatever, still write. You know, if you don't want to become a photographer, still buy a camera and take pictures. Like, don't let that part of you die inside, right? If you want to follow it as a profession, great, do that. But nothing should stop you from doing it. Because I kind of feel like, hanging out with Layla earlier today, we had this conversation about how when you're a little kid, everyone dreams about being a ballerina or a firefighter or a basketball player, right? These are all our dreams, right? Nobody grows up and says, no, as a little kid, nobody says, when I grow up, I want to be a financial analyst for Morgan Stanley. Like, nobody has those dreams, right? But somewhere along the way, when we're, I don't know what age, somebody tells us, no, you can't do that. Or I can't make a living doing that. How am I going to do that? And you start thinking about all these things. So all those dreams, all those things you want to do, they start dying. And so you start living this life where you get a job, you're successful, you're happy, you have a loving family, but there's still that coulda, woulda, shoulda, Brian McKnight, that's living inside of you. I know my audience. It's living inside of you, and that part of you is dying. And so don't live a life of coulda, woulda, shoulda. Just do what you want to do.
For me, it's kind of hard to back up. But just my experiences, I would say don't get too caught up in what you're conditioned to do. Like, you know, we go to we go to school, we go to college. We have to get this great degree to get this great job to pay bills and pay our loans back. I think that when we live life, we're so caught up in what we think we have to do. We think we have to have so much money to live this certain lifestyle. And I think the best thing about our religion is that it teaches us to be comfortable, to accept what you have, and to don't be greedy, and to, you know, we have a way of life to live. And I think if we focus more on how we're supposed to live instead of how the world wants you to live and how much money you have to live this type of life, that's when you start losing yourself and you lose your Islam, or you lose who you really are. And so I just say, like you said, do what you want to do. Even if it's not a profession or whatever, it doesn't make this type of money, be happy. And I think as a young Muslim, for me, I think it's for me to be happy. And I found my happiness. I had a passion early on, which was basketball. And as I lived life, it changed. Either you can get injured, or for me, somebody tells you have hijab, no, you can't play. So you never know. And so you have to have another type of happiness. And for me, I found my peace within my heart, and it was Islam. And now I know that I'm finally taking my life and kind of making it meaningful. I spent 6 years in college learning whatever, writing papers. Now I feel like it's time for me to really learn about who I am as a Muslim, and my religion.
So this goes back to the last question as well. But the one thing that I want you or anyone to leave this conversation with is, don't view us on this panel or Malala or any of these people as the exception to the rule. Don't view us as, oh, we're some sort of exception, we're speaking out, we're doing all these cool things or whatever. Realize that it can be you, right? Like, I met the president, whatever, cool, that's awesome. But it can happen to you. If it happened to me, it can also happen to you. All it takes is following that passion, following that dream, and pursuing your goals. And I think that it's really easy to get caught up in viewing people as the exceptions. But oh, he's a Muslim, he's an exception to the rule, he's not actually a terrorist, or oh, he's this, like he's away from the norm, so he's an exception. I think we need to stop viewing people as exceptions and realizing the potential and humanity in all of us, and embracing us in that. And if you leave here realizing that we or anyone that you look up to is not the exception to the rule, and seek out role models. I think it's sometimes hard to see the role models in our lives or who we look up to, but they exist. We need to open our eyes a little more, because our mainstream media is doing us a huge disservice by not uplifting the narratives that we can empathize with. But with some research, with some good friends, and with some good guidance, you can find those role models and see yourself and see all that you can accomplish. And by not viewing us as the exception, but seeing us as yourself, I am so confident that every youth, every person in this room can go on to achieve such greatness.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Hassan Sheikh. And my question is, are there other voices, other stories of American Muslims that you believe are empowering, that everybody in this audience and at home should be investigating?
Say that last part again.
Are there other stories other people's stories that we should also be looking at that fall in the line of American Muslims that have past trials and tribulations like yours?
I'm sure you have. Look around in this room. There's incredible people here. Like, it's everywhere. We're very fortunate to have incredible people here. Is he still here? Can't see anything. Okay, we have I don't mean to put him on the spot. He doesn't know I'm doing this, but we have Dr. Saeed, like one of the OGs of the Muslim community. He's the Muslim Papa Smurf. He's here. Like, that's awesome. This man has incredible stories, right? He's seen this community grow, and he's doing incredible work today. Like, there's so many people here. And so it's not a special project. There's great projects where people are doing stuff, but like, everybody is doing amazing things. We all have stories to tell. There's nobody or no outlet or person that has a monopoly. We all have these incredible stories. I feel like we just don't realize that we have these stories to tell.
I feel like each one of us has a struggle, and all of our struggles are different, and I think we all handle our struggles in different ways. I think for us, it was just put on this, it was highlighted, especially for myself as the first Muslim basketball player to play in Division I basketball. That was, well, really, I'm the only one to do that right now, and I pray that there's somebody else that can do that, and that right there would be another great story. So I think that it's having a voice. I know Ziad mentioned earlier, you have to have a voice, and you never know if your story could really affect somebody. And so I never thought my story was going to be, I never thought I was going to be sitting up in chairs and speaking in front of audiences like this. That wasn't ever my dream, and I accepted it, So I think everyone has a story, and it's worth to share because you never know.
I wanted to just expand the American story, Muslim stories that are available. This brother asked, and you had mentioned it before. My name is Rafia Jones. I'm a native of DC, but I have been involved with the Hijabi Monologues Project, and those are stories of American Muslims, women, specifically American Muslim women, and you can find us on Facebook. You can see some of the dialogues that we have, or the monologues that we have performed. And we've actually done things here in the DC area. But you're right, the stories are multiplying little by little by little. So I'm grateful to have this forum to share and to learn at the same time. Thanks.
Yeah, did you want to add to this last question?
Yeah. Thank you. What I would say is look in the mirror. I think that often because of this belittlement, and because of the fast pace of our life, because of how busy we are, we forget to look in the mirror, and we forget to reflect, and we forget to see how profound our experiences are and how they can impact other people. We all have a story to tell. We've all experienced things that people can empathize with and that people can resonate with, and that can be the spark that changes the world. We all have it within us. We've all experienced hardships. We've all experienced beautiful in our lives. And if we continue to share them and use dialogue and use intersectional spaces to realize our commonalities and to realize our common struggles and to work together to solve them, I think that we'll see that we all have stories and we can all be moved by them. And also, I think that while we all do have stories, there are people who are just excellent storytellers, like Amano, like Wilkes, like everyone in this room. There are people who do have beautiful voices. And I think one thing that's really helped me find my voice is by those voices. Like, I love slam poetry, and I'm moved by slam poetry. And when I get chills, and when I feel someone's pain, and when I feel someone's sorrow, I'm prompted to act on their behalf and to speak out for that injustice. And I think that if we'd seek out on YouTube, on news, on AJ Plus, on whatever news stories that we wouldn't normally come into contact with, and let ourselves be vulnerable to them, and allow ourselves to go out of our comfort zones, to engage in conversations with people we don't normally interact with, and we realize those stories, I think that we become a lot more human, and we see and we embrace in that empathy and that humanity, and we'll see that those stories are everywhere. And because of those stories, we realize that how beautiful our diversity is and how much change we can impact with that.
Yeah, I just want to add that, the purpose of us even having these three speakers is also to demonstrate that sometimes telling your story, it's unique in its own way, but you could even be telling one other person
you know, and these are 3 examples, but we hope that we can include many over the next, you know, year where people are feeling inspired to tell somebody about who they are, and sometimes that's not to an audience, right? So we have a question. Remember, we are receiving questions from #Muslim Youth Identity and through our Facebook page, facebook.com/AMHPUS. And this question is from @Sana_Alahi. How do you balance your Islamic lifestyle, praying, fasting, with mainstream culture and not seem isolated when everyone else is drinking and you cannot? This is specifically for Bilqis and Aman.
Shirley Temples. I am who I am, right? And so I'm as a comic, like I hang out with a lot of comics, a lot of them are alcoholics, kind of kick it. It's whatever. I don't ever feel pressured, I need to drink or I need to explain myself. It's whatever. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like people start like I like is disciplined by that. I don't ever feel weird. Right, and I'm just being me. I never get bothered by it. People like, why aren't you drinking or this or that? I just don't acknowledge it. And I never feel apologize to anybody.
For myself, like you said, the people start to respect you when you come off and you have, you know, you're not afraid to, like, I played for many basketball teams, and immediately they knew I was different because I was covered, and I would just be like, look, I'm Muslim, this is what I don't do. When a man walks, or a man or a boy walks into our apartment, I have to have a hijab on, so make sure. So when you set those foundations and those standards, they start to respect that. I remember I would have, my teammates would be like, Kisi, it's 1:30, did you pray yet? Like, that's how much they respected what I did. And when you have, you know, your peers and who you're around literally remind you to pray, that's when you know you've set your foundation and it's strong. And for a while, like, I would have to leave practice to go pray. And when I was at the University of Memphis, I would say, Coach, look, I gotta go pray, and it was fine. After a while, you know, that situation, Memphis, my coach at Memphis was a little different. It started to be some problems. She would think that I would leave practice during a certain drill, or, you know, I even told her, look, get an app on your phone to know when I have to pray. So for me, I think, like you said, it's easy when you know what you don't want to do. If you don't want to drink, you don't want to drink. I would always have so much peer pressure. My teammates would have a party in my apartment. Kisi, you gonna take a shot tonight? And it's like, you guys know, come on. Like, you know, so they would make jokes about it, but if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. That's it.
There's one more question.
I would say two.
Go ahead, Ziad.
Oh, sorry. I would say two things. I would say, don't ever bite your tongue. Don't feel like you should just let someone walk all over you or demean or your faith or assume things about you. Explain to them. Tell them why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that, like, echo what they're saying, people respect that and want to be a part of it and really value your faith when you let them know why. Like, people are so moved when I explain to them why I'm fasting. And I tell them that it's a reminder that I'm remembering God at all times, that I'm so much less likely to sin because of that hunger, and then I have so much more empathy because of fasting and the amount of community that comes out of it. When I explain that to people, they're so moved. And like, how can I fast with you? And some of my friends, a lot of my friends have fasted with me. I was in Morocco doing a service trip last summer, and my sister and I were there, and we were fasting. It's a Muslim country, so it was pretty convenient, like, alhamdulillah. But almost everyone on the trip, even though they're all other non-Muslims, fasted with us at least once. And I think that people are really moved when you give them the time and you give them the courtesy of explaining it to them and not feeling embarrassed. And also, don't isolate yourself. I think it's sometimes really easy to say, okay, these non-Muslims, they drink, they do this, like, my culture is different, I'm going to stay away from them, I'm going to stay in my little Muslim bubble. But I think that we really lose out on an opportunity to educate. And education is key to understanding. And the only way that we can really destigmatize Islam and really show people the peace and goodness of our faith is by just being ourselves and not isolating ourselves and using our voice to demonstrate who we are and what we're about.
I want to just add one question here. And, given that this person asked about or referred to isolation and, navigating mainstream culture and her faith, what do you say to the young person that is not feeling so courageous? Where do they go? What's your advice? Because it takes courage to do what you guys are talking about, right?
Absolutely, and I think it's important, at least for me, is to make sure that these conversations that we're having, I have these online as well, because there's a kid in Nebraska that feels like, you know what, I think I'm the only person that's going through this issue, and I'm like, yo, check out my homegirl in Florida, she's going through the exact same thing, and then you connect those people, because I always feel like I might tell you my story, or Bilkis might tell me her story, and I might not be able to relate to the struggles and the pain that she had to go through. But we each have a central nervous system, and we each feel pain the same way. And it's a matter of understanding the journey she took to get that pain. We all know how to feel pain. And so it's taking the time to understand these things. And that's how our storytelling is important. And so what I try to do is talk about these issues, because a lot of imams are great, they're talking about these issues finally, but there needs to be more. I don't hear these conversations at the khutbahs, at the Friday prayers, or at the conferences and stuff like that. And so I'm not a scholar. I don't even pretend to be or anything like that. I have respect for people that do. But I'm like, yo, they aren't talking about it, so we got to take it to them. I go to the hookah bars. I go to the chai shops. We go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever, and have these conversations. Because a lot of these kids that feel isolated, they feel like, look, nobody understands what I'm going through. And it's just so fascinating that people don't realize, like, how many people are out there are going through the exact same things that they're going through.
I'm not gonna sit here and act like it wasn't hard. It was hard. And I'm just sitting here thinking about the things that I had to overcome in college, being the only basketball player. Seeing your friends wearing the cute outfits and going out, and it was hard to fight. I know I have been in places where I shouldn't have been, or, I've done some things I probably shouldn't have done, but that's a part of being a Muslim. And until you have that in your heart, like I said, I wanted that for years. I wanted that feeling. I would talk to girls who would just started wearing hijab or just converted, and they would be like, I fell in love with Islam. I fell in love with it. And I always would say to myself, how did they feel that way? What made them fall in love with it? And the only thing I would say to somebody, and I know and I always say this, it sounds cliche, but I prayed. And that's what we're demanding to do. When you feel lost, you remember Allah, you pray, you remember God, you remember why you're really here. And that's what I finally had to come to. And I would say that for everybody, you have to really be sincere in your intentions, be sincere in your prayer, remember, and that's what it took for me. But it's hard.
Thank you, Bilkis. Ziad.
What I would say is hashtag Muslim Youth Identity. Redefine.org/stories. There are platforms that exist to allow people to tune in and to be engaged in conversations where they can hear people talking about their narratives and things that are personal to them, and we use the internet, use platforms to find those conversations, to tap into them, and to read about narratives that are similar to yours, that you think only you can maybe understand, and connect with those people and find those role models and connect with them. There's so much power in that. So I think using the internet has really been important to me. So I've met so many people from all around the world who really feel the same ways that I do about a lot of these issues. And that's really made me so much more confident in my Muslim youth identity. But also, what I'd say is people are always going to judge you, whether it be for Islam or anything. People are always going to judge you. But I think that it's really important to stay true to who you are. Don't change because of them, right? You are who you are. Continue to be that way. And I promise you that you will find your way to people who understand you, who love you, and who believe you're beautiful as much as they should.
Thanks, Ziad. I think we have a question in the back.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alberto Figueroa, and I want to thank the presenters. It's been wonderful, and please excuse me if you sort of laid the context for my question. I came a little late, but I noticed on the flyer it was youth, Muslim youth and mental health, and so I was hoping, so what I've been hearing is very good, except for the young man in Florida who was very specific about some mental health issues in particular that our youth continually face, regardless of, you know, their identities, etc. I'm hoping that maybe some of the, you know, in storytelling is absolutely a good tool, and I like the gentleman there, the comedian, excuse me, your point about reaching out and being sort of that proxy mental health professional and linking up your people and the people who reach to you and you making that connection. So I'm hoping that maybe the three of the presenters, if it's okay, if you didn't cover this, would talk a little bit or mention sort of in their families or in their networks, was there ever any mention or encouragement to seek mental health professionals, and to the extent to which the storytelling or the coping strategies, the young woman with the jihad and the networking and the support from your group, those are very clear coping skills. I mean, I'm sort of an academic and in the mental health profession, so, you know, I hear this. I'm not a practitioner, I'm a researcher, so I'm hoping that maybe the three of you could mention that quickly so that the audience might hear more specifically about mental health.
Just so I understand, just the importance of talking about mental health, or?
No, whether your families or as you were coming up or your experiences asked for or encouraged you to seek a mental health professional, specifically, you know, outside of, you know, a Muslim environment. I guess that's sort of, and I know there are, I know there are Muslim psychologists, I know lots of them, so, and we're working on not me, but they are working on a textbook on Muslim psychology, so, you know, these are important things. So I'm just hoping to bring it back, tie it back to mental health. That's what I'm.
No, absolutely. And I mean, this is just my own personal experience. This isn't representative of the Muslim community or this or that. But like, I have a therapist that I go to once every other week or whatever. And I remember when I first told my mom I was going to therapy just because like stress and anxiety and stuff like that. My mom was like, "Beta, just make dua and it'll be fine. Like, you don't need to go. Like, it's fine. You're not crazy." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not crazy, but like, just trying to make sense of everything." So I wouldn't say that Muslims are against mental health or whatever. I think there may not be an understanding, and it's silly because the understanding goes all the way back to the Quran and the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, all this stuff was laid out. Like, Islam talks very clearly and directly about these issues with mental health. The Prophet ﷺ, when Khadija, his wife, passed away, he mourned for a very long period of time and didn't want to go out very often. And so these are issues that people have gone through throughout history. And these are the things we need to talk about. I think there still is don't talk about mental health, because they're going to think you're crazy or this or that. But I'm just going back to history, you know what I mean? This isn't an issue that's unique to Muslims. I still feel like, even though mainstream society is a little bit more embracive of it, I still feel like there's still stigma. So I don't like to say that Muslims are against that reflection of where we are as a society. But
no, I've never, nobody in my family has ever, told me to seek that. I don't think it was ever for me that serious, or I've never had those type of problems, I say, growing up or just throughout my life. For me, if anything was like my mental health professional was basketball. I would late night, if I was feeling stressed or anxiety.
Ball is life.
Right? Exactly. Ball is definitely life. And I would go to the gym and shoot. I would find myself there, and that was kind of my stress relief. So that's pretty much. I don't know too much about the mental health field and everything. Maybe I should kind of educate myself. But no, so I can't really say that.
So I've definitely considered at times being like, oh, maybe I should, or my parents, like, I get really stressed about tests, for example, like I maybe have test anxiety. And I have considered seeing a therapist or something of the like. And there's definitely been depression in my family, or friends, and them going to therapists or psychiatrists or psychologists or what be it. And it's definitely been something that's been a part of my life for a long time, particularly in high school, because I think, particularly in the area I live in the type of school that I go to, stress is very, very high. And a lot of kids are trying to navigate that and navigate the purgatory that is adolescence. And I do think that not just in the Muslim community, as Iman said, but in society, there is this stigma. There's a stigma that we should just always be happy, and that we should just pray and it all go away, or be it in different cultures it manifests in different ways. The belittlement of mental illness or depression, and I think it's really hard for people to understand. Particularly, like, it's easy for me to understand. Okay, fine, I get anxiety when I have tests. That's sort of like a causation reaction thing. There's something I can rationalize and then I can work on. But I think it's really hard for what I've seen in the Muslim community when kids have depression or anxiety that hasn't really been caused anything in particular. They just have a chemical imbalance. They're predisposed in a certain way, and it's really hard for a lot of parents who didn't sort of grow up in a world where they learned about that or were familiar with that, to understand how that happens and how legitimate and how severe that it is. And I think that as a community and as an American society, we have to continue to work towards uplifting narratives that are of positivity, of stopping these stereotypes that make people feel lesser than, and to show people it's okay. Like, it's okay not to be okay, and we need to be there for our brothers and sisters when they're not okay, because life's not always going to be up, and life's not always going to be happy, and things are going to get rough. But with Islam, with good morals, with good friends, with a good family, with taking the time to seek mental health, if that's the right option for you, and it's not the right option for everyone. As I've known a lot of people who have suffered from anxiety or whatnot, and they go to these people and it makes them more stressed out. They feel like they have a real diagnosis of the problem, and it makes them more stressed out. So I think that with everything, every person needs to really figure out what makes most sense for them and what will enhance their spiritual, their emotional, their positive journey in the best way. And their community, our community, needs to rally around each individual and their solution that they come up with that works best for them. If someone does go see a psychiatrist or has depression or has anxiety, the aunties at parties should not be whispering about it and saying, oh, look at that kid, he's depressed, what are their parents doing wrong? Or at school, the teacher should not be looking down on that student for having to take a mental health day off because their life is, they're going through a hard time. We need to be a support network and figure out what works best for us and be part of the solution for every single person as they figure out what works best for them.
Thanks, yeah. I can add as a psychologist also for your question that, part of this is also that these three people are talking about having access to positive things, to something positive in their world that they turn to. Not everyone has that. And mental health, encompasses that in itself. Our community definitely has a scarcity of resources for mental health services. So one of the reasons we're doing this talk too is to generate some energy within young people to try to build those resources. They don't happen overnight, and I think through inspiring people, through the stories we're demonstrating, we can start to have people who are like, you know what, that doesn't exist. Maybe we can figure out a way, just as Ziad is saying, to build that. And I know there was a question here.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rada, and first of all, thank you, Ziad, for bringing up San Bernardino as a fellow NYC camper in those very mountains. The heartache is deep, and I echo all the heartache that's coming from this tragedy. You mentioned something very briefly, Ziad, about combating stereotypes from within our Muslim community, and I think that's very important because right now we're all struggling to sort of assert our identity or American identity in this society, but at the same time, we're so quick to vilify each other or vilify our diversity in our opinions and our backgrounds within our own community. And it's really tragic because the mental anguish that can come from that can sometimes be even more strong than what you're getting from the outside. So you're combating things that are going on inward and outward, and I think it's really important for us to really reflect inwardly within our community and have more empathy with each other. And so my question is, could you speak more to your experiences as a youth dealing with this issue? And Aman and Balqis also, I'd like to hear your input on this issue as well.
Which issue specifically?
Combating hate within the Muslim community. So for example, if you try to do something or try to make a difference, you'll see a lot of haters from within giving you backlash about, oh, you're not Muslim enough. You're not, why are you supporting this issue and not this issue? And it just goes on.
You got it? You want to go first?
Me?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, yeah, I can certainly answer first because I feel that so hard. I've definitely been told more times than I can count that I'm not Muslim enough, and I've heard other people tell people that they're not Muslim enough. I mean, in my Muslim American community, in the Greater Princeton area, we have kids that drink, we have kids that date, we have kids that smoke pot, we have kids like me who are huge advocates of marriage equality. We have the whole gamut of truly what the moderate Muslim, what the American Muslim looks like, because we are all practicing our faith in different capacity. We all commit sin in different capacity, and we all navigate our American Muslim identity differently. But it's been really a hard time. When I started Redefine, and when I did engage in this work, I did not expect, and this is my own fault. This is my own fault thing. I did not expect the American Muslim community to rally around me the way that it we're in a place that wouldn't accept a kid that was speaking up for marriage equality and saying that if we're gonna say no to Islamophobia, no to anti-Muslim bigotry, we also have to say no to homophobia. And I wasn't convinced that we were at a place in our community where that would have been accepted. And I know that not everyone in this room probably agrees with that sentiment. But I've been really moved to see that people might disagree with me on the Black Lives Matter, on where I stand with marriage equality, on different things. But ultimately, they see me for standing up for justice. They see me for speaking up for what is right. They see me using my voice to advance positivity to some level, and they rally behind that. And I think that because of that, I've really been moved, and I'm really, really hopeful and optimistic about the ways in which our American Muslim community can progress to not be so judgmental and to not ostracize people within our faith, because you can be gay and you can be Muslim. You can be lesbian and you can be Muslim. You can have depression and be Muslim. Your Islam is your Islam. And people practice in different ways. And I think we need to stop closing doors on people. We need to stop. If someone is sinning and drinking, is it going to make them stop drinking if we close the mosque door on their face? Is it going to make them be more open to Islam if people are just constantly talking about them whenever they're around? If someone's dating and we just keep on ostracizing them and making them feel lesser than and dirty because God forbid they're in love at a too early age. I recognize that there are culture differences and that we're not all at the same place in our American Muslim identity, and there's nothing wrong with having different opinions. People can feel differently, but I think ultimately I've been really moved by where our American Muslim community actually is, and I think that there's a lot of work to go. We have a lot more work to go, but we're getting there. And I think that when we have leaders like Reza Islam, who's not everyone's the biggest fan of, or like Wajahid Ali, or like whoever might be those leaders, or Ayman Mouladeen of NBC or the Al Jazeera reporters, or whoever they might be, who are really much more accepting and as they navigate their American identity, but might still have different Islamic points of view. I think that we're really starting to see a shift in a more accepting respecting American Muslim community within, and I'm really excited about that. But yeah, I think that we do have to stop vilifying each other. We have to stop detrimenting our faith and detrimenting each other, and we really just need to embrace in our Islam and our community and our identity and uplift each other's narratives and try to understand. Because I think we act so much out of ignorance, just like Trump and Carson do. They act out of ignorance. They don't understand Islam. We need to have conversations with those that we don't understand and try to understand. We owe each other the attempt to try to understand each other's narratives. You can't just write someone off without having a conversation like, why did you do what you do? Like, where are you? How can I be of help to you? How can I lead you in the best direction that's best for you, that best benefits your Islam, but that best benefits our community? And I think if we start thinking more community-minded and more about empathy and humanity and less about semantics and little details and all these little things, and more just about our belief in God, our belief that let's pray together, let's work together to make a better tomorrow, and start thinking more pluralistically with leaders like Omid Safi and so many beautiful, amazing people with their leadership. We'll see just transformative differences within our community. I think we're heading in that direction, and I'm really excited about it.
Thanks, Yad.
So this happened to me recently. I was doing a show in Chicago, and the organizers were like, "Hey, our budget's a little tight. Can't really get you a hotel. Can you stay with one of our people in our community?" Like, that's fine. I love that. I love to hang out with people. So I'm at this guy's house. He picks me up from the airport, and so he didn't know who I was. So I get in the cab or get in the car with him, and he picks me up and he says, "So what do you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm a storyteller. I'm a comedian." And he's like, "Oh, okay, you're news comedy. But what do you do?" I was like, "I do this." No. He's like, "No. But what do you do?" I'm like, "This. Like, this is my career. This is my profession. This pays the bills." And he said, "You do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You don't do anything else?" I'm like, "I mean, I've done other stuff, but this is my career." He's like, "Oh, why didn't you like get into something else? Like, you couldn't get into med school? Is that why? Like, you couldn't be a lawyer? Like, that's why?" And I wasn't offended. I wasn't like, "How dare this person not know who I am," or this or that. And I was like, "Okay, he just doesn't know." But he kept like insisting. He's just like, "Why did you get in? Why? Like, why?" And he kept talking about like, this is dunya, like this is worldly thing. Like, why are you doing this comedy stuff? Like, why don't you do something that's helping the community? And why aren't you doing something of value and this and that? And so I don't mind if this is people's opinion, but I'm like, yo, this guy's like, I'm supposed to stay at his house, like whatever. But fine, it's not a big deal. I'm like, yo, that's cool. That's totally cool. Like, whatever. So I go to his house. I get ready. We go to the show. He comes to the show, brings his family. And alhamdulillah, the show went really well. Like, the crowd was awesome, really energetic and really supportive. I get off stage, and he's like, "Wow, that was great. Like, let me introduce you to my daughter." I was like, interesting. Oh, our community is backwards or not supportive. I just think genuinely, it's hard for them to wrap their head. Like, yo, Google image search, I thought they all look like ninjas. Like, who's this hooper here, like, killing it? Like, and it's not that they're ignorant and don't or against women playing basketball. Some, a lot of them just don't understand, and so I use that as okay. And so I use that as motivation. So I'm grateful that guy, said that. I'm grateful that Amanat Ahmed, when I was 14 years old, this kid I went to Sunday school with, said that I'm going to end up like my brothers becoming a doctor. Like, I'm thankful for that kind of stuff. Not because I hold grudges or bitter. I'm not that kind of person. I don't hold any personal grudges, but that's motivation. And if you look at some of the greatest people in history, a lot of them were the same way. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest players ever in the history of sports, at his Hall of Fame speech, spent 6 minutes trashing his high school coach. "Dude, you made a mistake. Why'd you come in from that basketball team?" Not that he's holding a grudge. He was like, "Thank you. That was kindled to my fire." And so that's just how I'm wired. This is just who I am. And so I don't take that as bitterness. Like, man, they don't support me. Man, they don't do that. It's just back then they didn't want me. Now I'm hot. They're all on me. Like, that's just how I look at it. So I take that energy and just channel it positive.
Well, I think the worst thing you can do as a Muslim is judge another Muslim. We're all equal. And as soon as you do that, that's a sin, So you have to just be supportive and watch what you do and watch what you say. And for me, there were audiences or where I played this video and somebody yelled out, "Oh, that's not full hijab," you know. And so there's just like there are people who don't understand. You know, I think God blessed us all with the talent, and it wasn't for no reason. You know, mine was basketball. His is to be funny. Ziad is to be a teen. You know, changing lives at 16. So I think we're all given a talent. We all have a calling. I thought mine was going to be a basketball player my whole life. But you know what? I was living up to this image of being the first Muslim basketball player. It was an image, Muslim basketball. When basketball was taken from me, it was just Muslim. So that's when I had to realize, wow, am I really paying attention to this Muslim part? Or am I just living up to the basketball part and using the Muslim part to get me to places? And when you're living it, you don't feel it. Now that I look back, I see, you know, that, man, was I doing enough as a Muslim? Yeah, I was praying. Yeah, I was fasting. But it was all kind of mechanical in a way. And I always go back to it being in my heart. And, you know, when you find it that Muslims don't really support other Muslims right now. That's just not what it is. And mashallah, let it go, you know. And I think that's where you have to have you have to have strength. And I know some people, they don't find it, but it's you have to fight for it. And what he said about, I think Ziad mentioned, you know, if you can be gay and be Muslim, be lesbian, be Muslim. No, you know, I don't agree with that, because I think that we're all tested. And when you are tested with something like that, Allah's putting that in your life to fight it. Do you have the strength to fight it? Or are you going to let that sin or let that identity take over? And for a lot of us, that's what we have to battle with on an everyday basis. You have to fight that test. You have to fight that battle. And I just pray that, you know, whatever battles everyone is fighting, whether it's in here or any other Muslims or any other religion, I hope that you know, overcome it.
Assalamu alaikum. I do have a question for Vakis, but before I say that, I'm Ben Abdul Haq. I'm a screenwriter, also president of 3R Productions Screenwriters Unlimited.
What's the name of the group?
3R Productions Screenwriters Unlimited.
Okay, cool.
Keeping it real, raw, and righteous. The 3 R's.
I like that.
I wanted to ask Vakis, but before I say this, I want you all to know this weekend in Long Beach, California, Muslims are coming together that's in the film industry in Hollywood. A lot of us are coming together in December the 5th in Long Beach, California, an all-day conference to deal with telling our own stories and not let stories like Homeland Security on cable define what Islam is. So we are doing that. The question I have for Keith, I may call you Keith. Has anyone approached you about doing a story or writing a screenplay or doing a movie on you?
That's funny. Him right in the back, John. He and another guy named Tim O'Donnell have been doing this documentary on me for almost a year now. It'll be a year at the end of this month. That was the first. This is the first story that's being done. So inshallah, it turns out well. I haven't seen a clip of it yet. So I guess because my story is still unfolding, you know, it hasn't come to an end yet. And for right now, that's what's going on. So I would love to do more. You know, after I seen his trailer, I'm like, man, put me on camera. You know. But so yeah, that's actually going on right now.
Okay, sure. We're just coming to a close here pretty soon. We'll do 2 more from the audience.
I'll be very brief. Welcome to the hood. This is my neighborhood. I work at Harvard University, and I've worked there for 35 years, and I take care of children. I think one thing I've learned more recently, part of my own growth, I'm 63-year-old, growing up, that those people who got acceptance in society were not those who were fighting for their own rights. It was those people who were fighting for other people's rights. It's just like a good leader is the one who makes the other person feel like $1 million, right? So I think that's the lesson that our children need to learn, that in school, when you fight or stand up for somebody who's being bullied or who's been made fun of, the person right in front of you is deserving the most good out of you, rather than being, certainly television and other things are good. But it's very, very basic level. But we need to learn from our Jewish brothers and sisters who were stigmatized for 2 millennia, but they managed to get that respect in this society for fighting for the rights of blacks. They are also speaking up for the rights of Muslims, and they spoke up for rights of Jews, of Japanese. And I think we need to be in that mode, to jump on just causes, social justice, not just for Muslims. We will earn justice when we are fighting for other people's justice.
Thank you.
Hi, Aisha Galani, Voice of America, Urdu service and host of Kahani Pakistani, which this is airing on, by the way. Thank you for letting me ask a question, because I get to ask you questions otherwise. But thank you guys for everything that you do, Bilkis. Thank you for bearing your soul the way that you did. I have a question. This applies to young people also. I have nieces who are teenagers, and to us. We're all aware of what's going on in the world, and we know that now is a time where Muslims are not in the most positive spotlight. How do you, from a mental health perspective also, this applies to you also, Muna, if you could answer this, how do you keep that from poisoning you and making you just feel very negative and angry at the world? Because I see my nieces do that too.
Well, I can say, just building off of what we talked about earlier, that in order to deal with an environment like that, most of the time in any community, especially a minority community, you do need a support system. You do need family members. You do need social support in some form, and a lot of people don't have that. So I think the most important way to deal with it is finding some form of something, which is what we talked about. That sometimes you're not going to a psychologist or something. First of all, you may not even have access to that. You might be a Muslim refugee who has essentially nothing, which we, because you're arriving here and you're likely you could have trauma, you could have depression after that. So, if you can find something positive and be able to find another individual that can kind of help you build that resource in your life, that's an important element. But it's really going to come from a much bigger place, which would be our community alone. This is where we can offer something where somebody really is struggling, it's filled with hatred, and it deals with further mental health issues, because usually it's a doubling down. There's other issues, and then you live in an environment that's rejecting you, and then that doubles down on your state of mental health. Essentially, you might deal with something much more serious. So, but it's not to say that the only thing we can do is build resources. The other thing we can do are things like this, where we bring more people into the fold, not just by, maybe building a clinic, but we start to say you can be a part of this discussion. Maybe this touches you in a different way. Maybe you're not gonna, maybe you can be creative in some way, or maybe you're and not follow a traditional path, but start to talk about how we can start to say, okay, you belong in this discussion too. You're not excluded. A lot of people don't feel connected to a mosque even. There's people who just don't feel connected to a community. So you build a place like that. I think that's the most important thing. Did you guys want to answer?
I couldn't speak to the mental health aspect of it, but a quick story. So a couple years ago on America's Got Talent, there was a guy named Kashif Memon. I don't know if you guys remember him. It was like this Pakistan. You guys remember him? It was like this Pakistani Fabi kid, and he did this Bollywood dance, and he made a fool of himself, and had an accent. He's like, I hope they like my dance, and he did this weird dance, and it got 20 million views, and everything's getting passed around. Everyone's talking about it on Facebook and Twitter and this and that. So recently, I actually did a show with him, and he does a dance, crowd goes crazy, and backstage, and I'm talking to him, and I'm like, you realize that they're cheering for the wrong reasons. They're laughing at you, bro. Do you understand that? And he looks at me and goes, I don't care. As long as I get to do my dance, I don't care. And I'm like, yo, that's life. As long as you get to do your dance, that's all that matters. And so with everything that I've done, with every failure or anything that I've ever had, I'm like, as long as I get to do my dance, like, I'm good. I don't care about the views or likes or comments or this. I'm very blessed to have that. But I'm like, yo, as long as I get to do my dance, like, I'm good. And so I always make sure that I get a chance to do my dance. And whatever it is, whatever passion that I have, as long as I get to do my dance, like, I'm good.
Yeah, do you want to add anything there?
In regards to mental health, as it pertains to negativity, I think that the way that I stay positive is through all those little precious moments. And I think there's so many of them every single day. When someone comes up to me after I speak and says, I got goosebumps, how can I be part of the solution? When someone tells you a story of how they came to terms with themselves and how they finally loved themselves, or when someone just has a beautiful act of compassion, whether it's as small as someone giving food to a homeless person or as big as welcoming a Syrian refugee family into one's home, there are so many beautiful, precious moments every day. We just have to keep our eyes open. And we have to remember that the mainstream media isn't going to show them to us. So I stay positive by actively seeking them out and remembering the purity and love that we have within each of us, and trying to remember to share that as often as possible. And I think if we all did a little bit more of that, we'd be a lot happier and a lot more positive. And I think we're getting there. And inshallah, as we work together and embrace those precious moments, our life will just become one big precious moment.
So thanks, Ian. So our time is coming to an end. I want to pose a final question to the three speakers, just to have us wrap up with this. If you could have the audience here and nationally leave with one thing today, what would it be?
Ziad has it.
It's for each of you, actually.
Ziad, go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, what I hope that everyone leaves from this is that we can all be part of the solution in different capacity, and it looks different for each of us. But I think the first step is always loving yourself. Is looking in the mirror, seeing what good you have to offer this world, and remembering that you're good enough. And then after that, trying to make sure that every person around you and beyond that remembers that they're good enough, and remembers and recognizes their Muslim youth identity for its profoundness and its beauty, and whomever else who isn't Muslim or isn't youth, everyone should accept and love themselves and their identity. And if we all did that and had a little bit more humanity, that's what I really want people to leave from here, and to just confront reality, and to work cohesively, intersectionally, as interfaith as possible to really advance the cause of justice, because I'm so confident, I've seen it happen. Together we really can. Together we really can, if we stay engaged, if we remain vigilant, if we seek out stories that need to be heard. We can do this, and we can be better, and we can love ourselves, and we can love everyone around us. And I just look forward to seeing that day with all of you.
Oh, that's hard to do. Say one final thing. I would say, after leaving here, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, Jew, black, white, Pakistani, whatever it is, I think that we all need to first, before you can change what Ziad was mentioning, changing the people around you, changing the image, you need to change yourself. I think you need to find that peace within your heart, whether it has to be spiritual. You know, I think we need to find that peace in our heart. Whatever you believe in, whatever you think, whoever you think you are, whatever you want to do, it has to be in your heart. And for me, I think that's what helped change me, and that's what helped find who I was. So go home tonight, whether you're Muslim, open the Quran, read a good ayat, read a good surah. Christian, go open the Bible, read something, and remind yourself. You know, we need to constantly remind ourselves why we're here. And this is what it is. You know, Muslims, we have Islam. That's it. You know, I don't think that, this is just my opinion, we have doctors, we have therapists, we have all of these people, but no person can change you. No human being can fix your problems. That's why there's a higher power. And until we all realize that, then we aren't going to change anything. And so before you go seeking out other people and seeking out this, or taking a sip of alcohol or smoking, whatever it is, you need to fix yourself. So I think that's what I have to relay.
So there's a story about this guy. I feel like my dad telling all these stories, but there's a story about this guy. He's trying to holler at this girl, right? And they're talking or whatever. And he's like, "Yo, girl, like, I'm trying to get this hustle off the ground. Like, I just need some money. Like, can you ask your pops for some money?" And she's like, "Okay, I'll ask my dad for some money." And so he tries to open up this business, and dad gives him like a couple $1,000s, and he opens up the business, and it fails, like, awfully. Dad is pissed. She leaves him. She want to get with me with no money? Like, no. Like, just leaves him, and he's just like, girl leaves him. So he's like single, losers, like whatever. Then he meets this other girl's like, "Yo, I'm trying to go to law school. Like, I'm trying to do this, and like takes forever." And she's like, "Dude, when are you gonna open up your law practice?" And it takes forever. Finally becomes a lawyer. The moment he becomes a lawyer, he's like, "Yo, I'm trying to be a politician." She's like, "Dude, you just wanted to be a lawyer and now you want to be a politician? Like, what is wrong with you?" And so he runs for office, and out of 13 people that ran for the local district, he got 13th place. Loses. So then he's just like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, pick a profession. Like, you're such a bum. Like, you're not going anywhere. You're such a scrub." And so then he runs for Senate in a respective area and loses again. So like, yo, this guy fails at his business, fails at this, fails at this, fails at this. And does anybody know who this man is? Who? Better believe it. Good old Abe. Everybody goes through these stories, right? It's all about making sure that you do your dance and not being discouraged by it, right? And I'm an entertainer, she's a baller, and we're gonna do our respective things, right? But we're all capable of hooping in our own respective careers, right? I'm gonna kill it in the film game, she's gonna kill it at the hoop game. But if you're a doctor, be a dope doctor. Like, make sure you go all the way out, give them Garfield bandages, like lollipops, like everything, right? If you work at Taco Bell, chalupa the crap out of those fools. Like, that's what you have to do. Just strive for greatness. Like, we're all capable of doing it. Like, don't underestimate the power of what an individual can do. And that's always I've looked at it is, it's not just me, it's not just Bilquis or Muna or the people, wonderful people here at AMHP. We all play a role in this. And until we see it that way, nothing's gonna change. It's all gonna be a lot of the same over and over and over again. Whew.
So our time has come to an end today. Thank you so much, everyone that's joined us live nationally and everyone here in DC. I want to say thanks. And to Ziad. So I want to say thanks to Aman Ali for being with us today. You can follow him at his Twitter handle, at Aman Ali. I'd like...
I'm on Facebook. I have a Twitter account, but I never use it. I'm not a 140 character kind of person. So just find me on Facebook.
What's your Facebook page?
Just look for my name,
Okay.
Monali.
And thank you to Bilquis. You can follow her at queen_of_Sheba. Twitter. And you can follow Ziad. Thank you so much for being with us today, all the way from Tampa. We've loved having you. And you can follow him at Ziad the Activist. You can follow AMP at our website, amhp.us, and our Twitter handle at Muslim Health. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. It's been a really great event, and I hope that everybody did take something pretty positive out of the total program. Thanks so much.